So this session is to look at the projects that were previously agreed. Some of them the board agreed to do, but we really didn't start. And others we haven't even talked about at all. So it's trying to figure out which ones of these are still valid. Are there new ones that need to be added to this list? And that might come from resident input also. What are the financial implications? Some of these are out of reserves, that money is there. Some of them are not replace and repair, they are new projects. And with a new project, you gotta figure out where the money comes from. So you either build it into the next budget or you take it out of equity. There's just really no other source of income that we have to do this. So if, as an outcome of this meeting, we can all agree on at least the top 3 or more, and then assign a board member and one of Jim's people to help put this together to see if it's a feasible line item. If I go through these questions for the board, anyone have a question on this so far? Originally, the pool concrete and coping repair was part of the barbecue shade structure replacement, but if you look at where the cement is out there right now, it's in bad shape. The coping, you put your hand on it, it comes off in your hand. You're trying to walk across the pool and the cement's cracked. It's not cracking, it's crumbling, more or less. So I pulled that out as a separate item because this is the time to do it. There is $150,000 in reserves to do it right now. And I'm concerned with the hurricanes that hit back on the East Coast. Every time something like that happens, whatever provisions they need to rebuild, we suddenly have none of. So when you look at concrete and everything that goes with that, I'm concerned that if we wait 6 months, it's going to be twice the cost and trouble finding people to do it. So that's on there for that reason. The barbecue shade structure is still on there. There's I think about $150,000 in reserves for that. We need to know, are we going to begin the planning phase of this, or are we just going to tear off the roof and let it sit, or what are we going to do? Digital monitors, that would be, as Kara explained to me, it's one piece of equipment that goes across the front of the board, I believe, so that the board could see what's being showed behind them, like that, but maybe a little lower.
That's what we were trying to do.
Lower it, yeah.
Yep. There's another stand, lower stand.
So that would help. When you're on the board and you're looking out this way, you don't have a clue what's going on behind you, and you're trying to read from that screen. The bocce ball court replacement, there are $40,000 in reserves for that. I know Ken did some work on that about 1.5 years ago. He was starting to look at repairing it, and it just wasn't feasible. It needed to be replaced. One of the things that may affect this is the golf course. Right now, the area in the bocce ball area is not large enough for a regulation size bocce ball court. If we acquired the golf course, we could take down that fence and we could actually build 2 regulation size bocce ball courts with a cover over them because we'd have the room to do it. That includes tearing down the fence, countersinking the concrete, adding drains, recycled 2x4 plastic mounted into sidewalls. I don't know what this all means, but I'm saying it. Sanded artificial grass, and we could add canvas sails over the top of it. So the question is, do we just replace it as it is, where it is, or do we wait a little bit of time and see if we can add some space to that?
If I could just
Please
add some clarification too, as well, regarding the expansion of making a court more of a regulation size, which is kind of a loose thing when it comes to bocce. Since Old Italy, it was on an open lot on I think crushed shell, but it has become more of a specific surface that those games are played on, at least in my experience in doing some research in the past and what ended up at a couple of other communities that built several courts. But with regard to the area where it is now, we wouldn't necessarily have to put the court on golf course property. There's a triangulated section of the golf course where that barbecue is, that if you take the far corner fence where the bocce court is, and you take a line straight over to the back of the paddle court, that is technically the association's property. There's an easement, there's a legal document that grants use to the golf course for that space. We could rescind that easily if we acquire the golf course, so it would be a non-issue. But if there's another owner, we may have to approach that owner as to whether we can redesign that area to take back some of that land so that we can have the courts be more regulation size. The trade-off was where that small container is for EPC that's behind the paddle courts or next to the tennis courts. Mm-hmm. That's technically on golf course property that they granted an easement to us for that. There's also a small piece of where the horseshoe pits are. If you take that fence where the bocce court or the pool equipment room is, and it's not a direct line to the furthest point of the pool fence, but it basically dissects almost in half the horseshoe pits, where half is on our property and half is on actually golf course property. There's an easement there also to allow that to happen. So we have to deal with the legalities of all that, but it is possible to do what we're talking about and try to keep bocce in the location, at least the area where it is now. We may have to shift it over to the far court where the shuffleboard is closest to the clubhouse, because that would be the biggest section that we can go past the where the golf course is maintaining their barbecue area right now.
So if I could, if I can sum that up, we own the land, but we have an easement with the golf course, and so therefore we really can't move that fence and go out
Unless
further
that is
unless we settle the golf course issue.
Modified, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Audio-visual cameras for offices and reception desks. The cameras that we put in right now would not be the same camera we would put in the office or in Kara's office or on the reception desk, for instance, or maintenance, because we wanted audio with those. I believe we're kind of rethinking that. Especially after what's happened in some of the cities where they left on the microphones and information came out that they didn't really want to come out. So there's a privacy issue. We need to think about that a little longer.
Agreed.
Acoustics for the communications room and the meeting room has long been an issue. It was originally an issue out in the annex, if you remember, and we did put acoustics out there, and it made a tremendous difference. You couldn't even play cards out there before. It was horrible. So we do need acoustics in those two rooms. Whether that's a reserve item or a new item, you could go either way if I understand correctly.
It's more of a capital expenditure.
It's more new, but I'm not sure how much of it you could.
Yeah, I think it's probably too much of a stretch to say that it's replacing the paint.
Okay.
Get that
If I go back up to the top, let me make sure. But pool concrete and coping repair, that's a reserve item. The barbecue shade structure, most of that is a reserve item. Digital monitor, which is over here, that would be new. The bocce ball court is a reserve item. The audio-visual camera would be a new item. The acoustics would be new. And we're now down to kitchen remodel. That's one of those that showed up as 0 years left. I wouldn't want it as my kitchen, but then again, I don't cook that much anyway. this is another one. There's 33,000 sitting there. It's not used a great deal. It's used by some of the clubs. What if we actually acquired the golf course and they rebuilt the restaurant and we tied that in with our restaurant for different events? We might want a different kitchen layout. So I think at this point we'd have to decide, is it worth going ahead and doing something new right now, or do we wait a little bit and see what happens with the golf course and figure out what we're going to do in the kitchen? There is money set aside for that. It is reserved. The management offices, when we did the remodel of all of the rest of the clubhouse, the one thing that wasn't done was the communications room, I think, and the management offices. We have pulled things out of that, like the phone system, because Verizon said we're taking out your wiring and you won't have a phone system, so we got a new phone system. We also pulled out the computer part of it and replaced our computers because they had stopped working. But we still have the furniture remodel and a decision to make as to whether we move people around into other spaces, not more space, but just reusing the current space. But do we use the annex room for management and turn the management office into a card playing room or something? Those are decisions we haven't really made. We had a space planner that was given to us as part of our contract, but we didn't really get out of it what we wanted. So we would have to hire a space planner again. If you look at the furniture, I think Kara's desk is 32 years old. The problem with that is that the furniture is just taking up most of the room, and today we don't have big, what you had 32 years ago that you wanted to sit on that desk isn't what you have today. Today you have a computer. And that furniture is not set up for that kind of situation. It's a very poor use of space. We also, what would go along with that, that, by the way, there is $130,000 set aside in reserves for that. We could hire a space planner and start with that part of it. That's a long process. That's probably 3 to 6 months to even get to that point. Jim?
Yeah, well, there may be some, rather than to spend the money on a consultant on the front end, maybe there's some philosophical things or just the idea of moving management. I think you need to get past that first.
Where do they
before you
go?
spend a lot of money on planning. Because if you were to move staff into the annex, in order to get everyone there, with the exception of Kara and the receptionist, it would require the entire building.
And you'd have to do something with the storage.
So we have to find storage, which I've got an idea I would pitch the board to, I believe, resolve that. But it's more construction, and that would require permitting and planning as well. So, yeah, I think just the idea of moving, and there seemed to be, when it came up in the past, there seemed to be a concern that accessibility, even if it's from not necessarily from a business standpoint, because we would be better there. I can promise you we'd be more effective,
Less
and
traffic.
efficient in our work.
Yeah.
Less distractions, more ability to focus on work. But there's the accessibility factor and the friendliness and the, having staff around that people are used to. I initially tried to find a way to dismiss that, as that can't be more important than what you've hired us to do. But I over the years have become more concerned with that factor, that is a real thing here at the colony. There's this family feeling, and a lot of people, I think, get attached to seeing the staff each day. So again, I'm not saying that it's the right thing to stay there or the right thing to go over there as a bottom line. I'm just saying that it should be vetted
Yeah, we haven't really discussed it to any great length, and
No.
it's not adding space, it's reutilizing the space we have in a more effective way.
Yeah. And
Basically furniture, a
my
lot of it.
experience at larger communities, management that was on site was in a separate building typically. That was the ideal situation, is let the clubhouse be for the residents to enjoy and make it, maximize the space for their use. We take up, a chunk of it, and it could be utilized for something more recreation related.
Yeah, well, that's a change. You kind of have to drag us into change sometimes. I'm not sure how we would go about it, but we need to talk about it and figure out what we really want to do and probably get started with it.
Yeah, and if we stay in that space we're in now, it would need, there are some ideas to reconfigure that experience as well for like a walk-up window as opposed to people having to come into the office. We can maybe clear up some more floor space that way.
Okay, that is a reserve item. Next one is additional golf cart, not course, but cart
Oh, the court.
parking. It should be cart,
Yeah.
which possibly
course.
could be the golf course, but right now we're just talking about, we do have little corners here and there that we might utilize in the question, and we have more golf carts coming in all the time, and they do have a right, as I understand it, to park in one individual car space, but it tends to upset people who are driving cars. So do we find more spaces that are convenient for people driving golf carts that they can park, and which would free up more parking spaces for vehicles? Jim's looked at a couple of places. It's possible. It would be new. It's not a repair or replacement. If we ever should acquire the golf course, that means all of that land that is now under easement might be available also. So whether we want to do this now or wait to see how that golf course turns out, and if that gives us additional space, that's a consideration. Updating the new resident orientation and a mixer for new residents, that is not a monetary, that is a time and effort and planning. Jim has an example book that another HOA has used, and one of the things he's talked about is recording the speakers so that instead of having them all show up every time, you could just show the recording and then spend more time possibly on questions and answers. I found the last one I went to as a board member, I sat with a table of new residents, and it was very helpful to hear their questions and to be able to answer them for them, and I kind of like that, having board members there, one at each table, where you could kind of mix with new residents, and even when there were questions that didn't come up, you knew they should come up, you would ask it. So that's something that we could do that doesn't necessarily cost money, but it is time and effort.
It would give us a reason to provide popcorn, like a entertainment, right?
Yeah, what's that drum set over there for? Is that? The second to the last one, there's one I forgot to put on here, is digitalize the office records. I started investigating that a couple years ago because those file cabinets are taking over the whole office, and we have to, by law, keep a lot of those records for a certain period of time. I talked to a couple companies. They have two ways of doing that, and the biggest cost really is all of the back records, getting them into the computer. It's not the new stuff, it's the old stuff. You can hire people to do it, or you can take your records over to the company and they do it for you, but you have to have protocols as to what you want in each folder, and it's not easy, but as we go into a more technology-driven world, all those file cabinets just drive you crazy.
The easy way to do it is to just put it in one file, like for your property, anything related to that address would just go into that. The problem with taking the easy way is it's not searchable in that respect. So when Daryl and I had spoke about this at length, and we even looked at existing systems that would allow searching for documents by topic and just different ways to come to the information you need for different types of subjects. And you're absolutely right. That is what is the complicated piece of it, is to make it actually usable for not just management, but the board members that also want to research projects and different things that they've got on their plate too.
Yeah, I didn't go to the point of getting a cost estimate at that point. I just needed to understand what it all involved.
Right. So that area, I do have a lot of background in that, and there are good systems out there that do keyword searches, will do contextual searches. So that's something that needs to be looked at and put a price tag into. And in fact, a lot of this, I know we don't have prices on it, but what we're doing, if I understand correct, is prioritizing what needs to be done now, what do we at least start looking into to get the understanding of what it's going to take to get done, correct?
Right. Years ago, what used to happen is a board member would go off and say, hey, I got a project, and they would take a lot of time of Jim's staff or Jim putting it all together, getting costs, and then they'd bring it to the board, and the board said, are you nuts? We don't want to do that. So it was a big waste of time and money. So what we're trying to do now is bring these projects forward and have the board decide, is this something you want to invest more time and money in, and then do the research and not waste a lot of time and money in the process. The one thing I left off this list, well, to get back to digital office records, that while it is new, I think some of that may fall into replacement because you're no longer, yeah, it may be split between the two. The thing I left off was the sail cover over the pool and over the bocce ball court. I totally left, I think it was on the back of the page and I missed it. So that's one that would be added. Okay, so now at this point it's like open for discussion, questions.
All right, I'll kick it off.
Good.
I've been quiet long enough. First off, number one, without question, has to be the pool and the coping repair. We've been talking about this for way too many months. We are getting very close to winter. We need to have this done before it gets warm back again in the spring. So I don't want to change the priority on that at all. There's nothing else on this list that comes near to the importance of that'll affect so many people.
Yeah, this really wasn't a prioritized list at all, but that, I agree, that is the number one thing we can do without affecting other things.
So to understand correctly, and I've talked individually with some of you, so I have an idea of what needs to, the mindset that needs to change. Initially, we were going to look at the...
Hold on just a second. I think you've got the microphones mixed up. This one's hot right here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That one's hot. That's why you're getting the feedback.
Hello.
You got a mute button on the bottom if you need it.
Well, that's an off button.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Sorry about that. The back area, anything behind the clubhouse, the pool, the outside the atrium, the barbecue area, shade structure, that whole area, we were initially looking at that as a single project. We were, since the many of the comments that came back from the process the community went through with regard to the pool house, was not necessarily against improving the experience back behind the clubhouse, but we just didn't want that building or the cost of that building. So we were looking at bringing in a landscape architect that can look at an area. We have a fixed pool location, and so we know we have to work around that. We have a building, a couple of buildings we have to work around, but there's some flexibility back there, and So bringing them in and looking at the entire area was ideal. Let's get the biggest bang for our buck and get a consultant in here that can design it and give the community something to look at as here are some potential options, what we can do back there. So taking the pool deck and the areas that are disintegrating is what I'll describe it as. And it seems to all be in line with where water seems to drain and where the exiting of the pool is. So there's some kind of chemical reaction going on between minerals and that pool water we need to get to the bottom of. But with that aside, my understanding is that we want to make the pool a priority, which means we need to separate this into two different projects. Because I don't think the time frame we have to get this pool deck replaced before the season picks up again, and getting that area designed where we get community input and that kind of thing, that, as we all know, that is not an overnight process. It's not ideal from a cost saving standpoint to separate them, but I completely understand the need to move forward with that sooner than later.
Yeah, it's got to be separated. It's time to move forward.
So with that in mind, I'm already working with, I started with AEC, our street and asphalt and concrete engineer specialist consultant. We're looking at putting specifications together. That concrete, I hate to say, is only 11, 12 years old, and it's disintegrating. I mean, we have concrete that's as old as this community that looks great. It's just discolored and weathered from time. But there is something wrong with that concrete, and we realize it needs to be replaced for that reason. So many of you the people that have been here a long time remember Bob Schultz. He was on that project like flies on you know what. And he had concerns with what was going on. He had a lot of pictures. And it was very clear that they did not have specifications for that project and how to put that concrete down. So I am going to make sure that we have written specifications that have to be followed in order not only prep for the concrete, but also the concrete mix is going to have a specific design that's going to address whatever we've got going with our situation out at the pool. Whatever minerals are there that are inherent to the area, whatever our water, chlorine situation is with that water, we need to have the best concrete we can to withstand those conditions. So that'll go into the preparations for that project as well, and I'm already started on that.
I'm uncertain when we say that there's a reserve 150K. Those are probably pre-inflationary numbers, and do we have any idea, is that going to cover it, or are we talking about 300,000 and the other 150's got to come out of equity or whatever?
Well, they
So
haven't.
when will we know? Or today we're just saying go look at it, and then we'll decide to continue or not continue once we know more?
We need to get, we've agreed to go ahead and get costs on this so that we know what it will cost us. The new reserve study has just begun, if I understand correctly, so you won't have that for a bit of time
So
to know how much they're going to add to that.
So all these reserve items are the same, right? If we got 40,000 for bocce ball, we don't know if that's a good number at this point until they start looking at it, right?
So last year, knowing that this project would be coming, we typically let me back up a little bit. Typically, the concrete is addressed on a percentage basis for what's typical over time. And it's not a huge number because concrete typically has a longer life, usually more than 30 years for well-maintained facilities and grounds. But knowing we were going to be dealing with this, Jim Nash and I, looking at last year's reserve study, we put in 150 grand to be available for this year. Now, are we for sure that that's going to cover it? No, we don't know that for sure. But if it's short, it's still a reserve item, and it would have to come out of, or wouldn't have to, but it could come out of reserves for the entire project. Now, doubling the cost, I don't think it's a double the cost of what's put aside.
But the sooner you do it, the better, because I
Yeah,
think concrete
yeah.
costs will go
Agreed.
up.
Yeah, and I think we can stop talking about the combination thing and just, focus
Focus
in
on
on
the
this.
pool,
I think we
yeah.
all agree on that already.
And also, I mean, I've been here 2 years December, and all I've heard about is the pool. I mean, how long does it take to get these numbers together? I mean, it's time to get off the pot and make it happen. I mean, I don't understand how something like that can take that long. Where are we in the process? You sound like you're just going to start over again, or how deep in are we?
Well, just so you know, we're having trouble getting bidders for things. We're getting service providers. We're living in an economy where the businesses are in control. They are picking what they want to take on as a job. Just for instance, this room we're in right now has been out to bid. We're going on the third time. We will have gone to 15, almost 20 contractors that are not providing, and these are detailed specifications, so the job is very clear of what it is we're asking them to do, and they're just not interested.
I mean, have
And-
you talked to someone like Tom Bracken, who's been in cement business all his life? I
Well-
mean, maybe I know he can't do it. Does he know people? Have they talked to him?
No,
I mean,
the project was not higher than the projects that we were working on with like this, the one I just mentioned. It was after that.
Well, whatever we can do to speed it up.
I think
Well,
that-
now that that's what this meeting's for, is to reprioritize the workload.
I think you can take digital monitor, if you're going to use that as a digital monitor and just get a lower stand for it, then we can just take that off the list.
Agreed, yeah, that we can move on. But, so, all right, we all agree, number one is pool, right? We can move off of that, I think. Let's just get that done and get it done before the end of spring here. Other ones, I look at some low-hanging fruit, and I don't know where the rest of you are at, but this new resident orientation, that is something we can get done, I think, fairly quickly at a low cost. And it's so important because I don't believe people are walking out retaining the information they need to retain. And we've had a lot of new residents, and it's going to continue to happen probably for the next few years. The circle of life is happening, and we got to be prepared for that. I know we've got people here like Kathy that can be a big asset in helping pull that together. And
I think the only cost for that, well, there may be some printing costs, but I think it's the recording cost using probably Jake. Would you use Jake for that?
In the communications committee.
Yeah, in the communications committee to record the usual speakers so that you don't have to have them come back every time and go through it.
right, and there's a lot of different medias we can use. It doesn't all need to be in one meeting.
I think
We've
it would
got
be.
the website, we've got, give people DVDs if they need them, but we
Yeah.
can get creative on how to deliver to the different types of audiences that we have coming in. Some are going to be technology capable, give them a few clicks and they'll go on their own. and others, and
Well,
so
we're hard
it's a
copy.
combination of everything to hit the different audiences and to shorten it up so they can retain something as opposed to sitting for 2 hours.
That was an
listening.
example where I thought if we put out a survey to the people who had gone through orientation in the last year, they could probably tell us, I wish you'd told me this, I didn't need to know that. I think they're probably the best people to give us that information.
So where do we want to put that? And
That's not much of a cost issue, so if you want to put that as 2, fine.
that's where I'd throw it. One that we have to have some conversation around is that shade structure out there. It's one thing just to put a new topper on it, but again, what can we do? There's new technology. There's a lot of posts in that thing that are in the way of what you want to do for a lot of different events in there. If anybody's been back there for like a luncheon or whatever, you've got to move over to the right spot if the speaker's in the wrong place and things like that. I would love to find out with what's available today, technology-wise, to eliminate as many inside posts as possible to make that space much more usable.
Well, we've got splits in the beams going across there too, so we're going to continue putting metal braces up there.
Right.
It's going to look like somebody's mouth if we don't do something soon.
Yeah, the reserves are covering a complete demolition and replacement, so there are funds in there for that approach. I was just out there as late as yesterday showing Chuck some potential for accomplishing a little bit of what that building would have accomplished by bringing those 2 areas, the pool area and the barbecue area, to where they can be together when needed, so that when there's an event at the pool, that you've got this massive shade structure that's accessible, not where you have to go around to get to it, but it's more of a direct access. And we have some wasted space with the planter between the 2 spaces that might be an opportunity as well to relocate the fencing, the existing fencing, to just realign it in a way that we can gain more patio space on the barbecue side. It would do nothing to the patio on the pool side. It would just reduce the depth of that planter, and then open it up to where there is a wide double gate type of a situation that can open it up in the center to the pool area.
I think of the wine club when I think of that. It's probably
Well,
the
I
fastest growing
think-
club we have here.
Yeah, and there's even a more aggressive idea that it makes no sense from a financial standpoint to relocate the barbecue. It's in good shape. It just might be misplaced a little bit based on a bigger vision. If, just thinking out loud, if that were to be relocated to the walkway that starts to walk towards the annex building, there's the planter right next to the annex building. If that barbecue was set right there, it's more accessible to the kitchen, it's more accessible to the annex room for like buffet style access to feed food to that, or even be in line for it. And also would still service the barbecue shade structure area very easily. Removing it or relocating it allows for the shade structure to be extended closer to the clubhouse by a good 20 feet probably. That would again add more shaded space. During COVID, I don't know if you remember when you remember because you were out there exercising and stuff, we were trying to get as much, and I realize that was a circumstance that we were hoping was going to be short-lived, but having more outdoor shaded area is not such a bad thing to look for growth
And per the
to what we
city,
currently have.
That doesn't add, we don't have to add parking spaces per the city if we're
No,
just doing a
it's not
shade
square
structure.
footage to this
Because
building.
it doesn't have sides.
I'd like
that
to
it?
not go too far trying to recreate some of the pavilion deals and more. As soon as you start doing some of those things you mentioned, it's like trying to recreate some of those amenities that we got voted down in the first place.
Okay,
We
my,
may guess why they got voted down.
well, my
but I don't.
takeaway from the vote was the building. And again, a lot of the comments that came back were, hey, we completely agree with making that more usable and more attractive to get people to utilize it, like heaters, on exterior heaters and misting systems and fans and lighting that would make that space more user-friendly during times when it doesn't get used now.
I'm just saying, I just don't want to get really carried away trying to make the Taj Mahal out there when we just need.
Well, we can't put walls up. I mean, we can't, period.
I think it would be prudent if we evaluate the barbecue structure at the same time as the pool concrete, because if there's any construction activities out there, there'd have to be a critical path so that one activity did not impact another activity.
Say that again, you think that should be tied
If
to
we're
the?
going to send the pool concrete project back to Jim to get detailed costing, it'd be prudent to have him do the same thing for the barbecue shade structure. Because if you're going to look at constructing those two efforts, you're going to look at the critical path, and when they lay something down, if they do something next, so they don't interfere.
I don't want to add anything that may delay the pool structure. That's my only concern.
We need
I
more
understand where
time
you're
to
going.
plan back there.
No, it's not, it wouldn't be a delay, but you want to make sure if you're going to concrete one area, that that area is not going to be impacted by a future project.
I'll tell you what, it's being done in the right order, I can
That's
tell you
what I'm
that.
talking about.
Because if you're going to be running a pump and running those big heavy lines across the concrete, you don't want to run that across new concrete, obviously.
Right.
So doing the furthest point first is for sure the right way to go. So if it remains separate, like I think it started, this discussion, it is in the right order, in my opinion.
Jim, if you call in a designer to design that barbecue area, that whole thing, is that like a 6-month project just to get to the point of a design?
Well, again,
Because we can't find people to do it.
I think you'll be committed and should be committed to involving the community to some degree in that process. And absolutely 6 months, no question. No question.
So it's a town hall with, perhaps you come up with a basic plan and then you have a town hall and see what other ideas come out of it?
Yeah, I think even a survey to start, to kind of get you going into a direction, and maybe even have some ideas that you put into the survey. Do you support this type of an amenity or not?
Well, but the clubs that use it would be the first people I would ask.
Well, it doesn't hurt to make it a community-wide
Yeah, no,
effort, and you're going to want to have town hall meetings to discuss it. And I think after you have input from the community, you're going to, as a board, determine what seems to be the priority amongst our members as to what they'd like to see done there. And now you have an architect come in and design it and say, okay, here's how I would accomplish what you're asking for.
So right now, what we're talking about is, do we go forward with an information gathering portion of it, the beginning portion of it?
And it would start with the clubs.
I think so, because they are the ones that use it the most and would have probably the most input. There are people here who've never been there, been here 20 years and never been out in that area. and
Well,
some that use it
it's
every
an
week.
underutilized area because it's not
Friendly.
conducive to, it's an open patio, so the elements are, with the exception of a little bit of shade cloth up there,
Yeah.
they're on you. And to have a solid structure that's more rectangular and as wide as we can possibly make it to get as many people under that cover, it should be the goal.
So what we would be asking for right now is only the beginning stage, the informational stage,
And again, I mean,
I'd
we
like
had a
to-
fairly promising walk yesterday, right? Just even extending behind the annex building a little bit to provide some space for, even if it was like a little fire pit or something that, it's just wasted space back there and could easily be brought into the use of the members, of the residents.
I think the point is, I think we need to raise the priority. I'll just say right now, 3, we may find something else that'll hop above it. But move it to a 3 because we need to find out how that space will be best used. Once we know how we want to use the space, then we can figure out what do we need to do to accommodate that.
You're calling that 3?
3.
Now, we have a lot of, we have a lot of talented people who live here, engineers, maybe even people who can do artist renderings. How about we ask them to come up with some ideas of what they would like it to look like? You know, submit, you know, some drawings and all, just maybe help us all get an idea of what it might look like or could look like.
Now, we said to take the digital monitors off this now, right?
I'd take that one
I don't
off.
think it needs to be on there. It's done.
And then you'd have to talk about the bocce ball court and the other one that was, what was
Yeah,
it?
so
The
there's
additional
2 of
golf
them
cart.
on here. I'm gonna throw the bocce court out first, just, I'm not a bocce player, but believe me, I've talked to those people plenty. They're always, the nice thing is they're willing to share with you what their feelings are, and that's good. But as I walked out there and looked at it, it's in serious disrepair, those boards. The worst part that isn't showing its ugly head yet, but you can see it on the edges, that's not going to be a smooth roll much longer. In fact, it's kind of not a smooth roll now. All that, it's like a cement padding underneath it. It's a, what is that
You
under
know,
there?
that thin set there.
Yeah, where the court ends, there's drop on the walkway. That's where it starts to, the thin set is put in there or whatever they used, some kind of a slurry mix to
And it's just
to
crumbling
lift the
underneath
ends,
there.
and that's all. So you can almost see where that line is.
And that's what the carpet's on top of, right?
Yeah, but the
Yeah,
portion
it's-
that's under the actual shuffleboard court piece, that's level and it's intact. That's what they used as the majority of the play surface. But it's the 2 ends where they start to lift it, and that's just starting to crumble.
Right. So I'm torn between, and I'm not saying I have an answer, I'm just torn between, we need to understand, is it worth waiting maybe a year? Or, you know, what repairs can we start on now?
There are actually
So-
3 items that could be affected by the golf course. That's one. The other
Yep.
one is the kitchen remodel, and the other is additional golf cart parking.
So
Correct.
what I'm doing right now, I've got a price to replace the wood.
Okay.
So we did a temporary fix just to keep from having that end open up so your ball flies off into no man's land or no woman's land, whatever you want to call it. So in the meantime, we got a price to just replace the wood and do some minor repairs of the parts that are chipping away to get us by. Now, that's not, chump change either. You know, it's $6,000-7,000 to do that. So, but to me, it's a temporary fix to allow for a long-term solution at a better time.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do, that's above my spending authority, I'd like to present that to the board at our next meeting for consideration, so we can get at least new wood in there.
So that might be some low-hanging fruit if we can move that to number 4.
As a temp repair.
Temporary, yeah, understood, it's a
also-
temporary solution.
On the bocce court, I mean, have you talked to the bocce people, you know, do they want a 90-foot, 13-foot
Right.
wide? I don't think so, from what I've spoken
And I
to
think
them
you're
about.
right, but then again, we've got new people coming in, so do we,
Yeah.
Well, we're still
I
old, though.
think-
I mean, can you throw it 90 feet? I don't know, that's a long way down.
I couldn't
But
throw anything 90
it's,
feet.
I mean, just, and also, the overhang that comes there, is there
Yep.
any way, because if we did keep it there, definitely needs to be wider than it is.
Right.
But you got
That-
posts, you know, you got 4 posts there from the side of the, where the pool equipment is. Is there any way to put a header across that and get rid of the 2 middle posts? At least you can make it wider, and then, you know, the length,
We talked about a sail cover over that area, which might work.
Well,
well, it's part of the roof there over the.
yeah, if we gain the land, my recommendation would be to shift the court from underneath the current
Even if
cover.
it's the same size. Even if you wanted to make it the same, and not
Still
do
do that,
90
yeah.
feet.
Right, but
Still
you
do that,
can't.
because that opens up a lot of space. I mean, I watch when those people all gather for their
Mm-hmm.
evening gatherings with the food and the drink and all that, making that whole shade structure available for all that, and having the bocce court out another 10, 20 feet, whatever the number is, will make that space more usable for them too. So I think we can belabor it. I think the point is move it up to number 4, and let's understand what those options are, and then make decisions, what's the best path in the short term and long term.
And the number 4, it's actually probably going to get done, at least the temp fix, before anything else, so it's
Yeah.
almost like a number 1. But,
Well, the importance isn't number 1, but it may be the first thing that gets done.
Yeah.
Just because of
we'll
the
be-
others take more
Yeah,
time.
we'll be able to get it accomplished. We
And
already
Ken
have a
did-
contractor to do
Yeah,
it.
Ken did work on that about a year and a half ago. He had a lot of numbers together at that time.
Well, I don't know if you recall, but that was a joint effort. EC actually paid for half of the cost of that renovation. It was when they were early on, new contractor for us, and certainly we had a lot of work going on, that extra work that made it a no-brainer for them to go into that joint venture with us. That was their give back to the community and saying thank you for the business. So, and we knew it was temporary even then, and it, I think, significantly improved the playability of that, having that sanded artificial turf on there as opposed to the stuff you put outside of your camper when you're camping, stuff that was on there before. So we're getting there. The real fix is to build it right, which is to, you know, have the drains, countersink it, concrete, and will be done regardless of the size. It's the way we build it that's going to be important. You'll never touch it again when we do it again, when we do the final construction.
I'll throw another one out then. Joanne, you added the sails and shade structure and stuff. I think we need to add on to that too, as part of it, as long as you're going down that path. For some reason, when they put the shade structure on the paddle courts and pickle courts, they just put it over one small area as opposed to all the way across. And you got people, when you get 30 people out there on a certain day and it's a hot morning, everyone's trying to watch under the
There's
single
a
piece.
gentleman in here who contacted me, and he's retired from a business that does just that, the sailcloth covers and so forth. So he was interested in possibly helping us figure that out.
That's the kind of solution.
So, and that's the same company that built that as well. And I'm, as you are, I think, all aware, board members, I'm in the throes of doing the inspection on the facilities, and it's pretty extensive. And one of the areas that we were looking at making some suggestions to make some modifications in that area, relocating the bulletin board, for instance, putting it centered on the center court on the wall of the clubhouse, putting some concrete in that planter, break the planter up, and allow for that bulletin board to just be right behind, right there at the courts. We can put two up, one for the paddle courts and one for the pickle. Just things like that that we're looking for, just to make more sense and more, I think, professional, to strike a word to apply to that. I think it would be more appropriate in that setting. Whether it's on the building or on individual posts, I think it makes more sense in that area, and we can reconfigure the benches, especially, and this works if we extend the shade both directions to open up that center space a little bit for more of the business of the club.
So do we
Just
want
a
to
thought.
start on the, a cover for the pickle paddle tennis area first? Since that's already there?
Yeah, because that's a fair, I think we know who we're going to, because you want to use the same person or same company that did that work. They're going to match it exactly
And
so
that
that
gentleman
it's
might-
seamless.
Yeah, he might be able to give us some ideas on the design of that, if he was willing
Again,
to
I
do
think the
that.
design's already there.
Just extend it?
Yeah, it's just a matter of extending what's there. That's just my thought on that, though. But
So number 5?
Well, probably not all of it, but
No, but at least to
part of it,
start.
yeah.
And
It's
and
at
see
least
what it's
start
in.
with the
Right.
paddle pickle tennis court area.
Going the other way, I agree on the kitchen remodel. Just real quick, every golf management company that we talk to, especially the ones that also run hotels and restaurants and kitchens, all said that's an opportunity if that ever happens. So I agree, we should make that number 11 until the golf course issue is done.
Actually, 12.
They were actually excited about it.
yeah, because there's a difference in what a catering kitchen is required
Correct.
with the health department as opposed to a working kitchen. We are inspected as a working kitchen. We can cook in this kitchen. If we turn it into just catering, we may be limited to lose our ability to cook in there. So we'll weigh all that stuff out as we go through it.
Okay, do you want to make that a 12, though? That's,
A
we have
12.
actually
12,
12. No, I
yeah.
mean, we have.
Oh,
I thought we
give
had
it a 12 now? We already know it's the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's only 11. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, that's right. we
Oh, you took
off-
one
I
out.
already
Oh,
took one
yeah,
out,
okay.
yeah.
Then it is
All
over.
right. Thank you.
So the other one is perhaps the audio-visual cameras. Do we really want to pursue that now, or do we want to wait till LA dies
You know,
down?
that's the board's call. We're certainly not pushing for it. And we know the reason for it was primarily based on instances where there have been confrontations in the administration office where unruliness has come into play in their exchange with staff. And I think the board's thought was we need to get some of this stuff recorded so that we can show the people that are mistreating staff what they did. And it would help in dealing with those situations.
So your staff, what do you feel about it right now? Is that a high priority or a low priority?
Well, based on the list, I think it's a lower priority. I think it's something that we can resolve when we remodel and be part of that process, especially, you know, if there's a desire to relocate staff, I'd hate to put a bunch of money into a location that is temporary.
So then let's make it,
Yeah, let's
10?
drop it down, drop it down.
Is the kitchen remodel issue because we're not sure what kind of kitchen we want back here?
depends on what happens with the golf course. If we end up purchasing the golf course and they rebuild that restaurant, there could be a strong connection between the use of this kitchen and that restaurant.
There, yeah, like they may be transporting the warmers and things like that from their operation over here to do a catering, and we would want to be able to accommodate their equipment that's portable in our situation here.
No,
So
you're
we
still
want to
limited.
design around that kind of
You're
stuff.
still limited on the space, so we need to make sure we optimize the space, but we need to know exactly how it's going to be used to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So, where'd you move it at? 10. And so and you got the remodel at 11,
We've got golf cart
golf cart parking.
parking.
I put digital, I'm a big fan of digitizing the documentation. Number one, not only from a space, it'll save on a tremendous amount of space,
It will.
but also from a security and backup. I mean, we can, you know, if a bomb were to hit this place, having it stored digitally, we can have it stored remotely.
Well, and that's what, when I talked to Kimberly too, and I talked to the company, you could get rid of probably all but about maybe 3 of those file cabinets, things that you absolutely had to keep hard copy of.
It's primarily the
premises.
architectural stuff, the plans that are too big to scan. And again, even those have a solution ultimately, but that would be probably the last thing that's addressed, would be those larger plans.
Would these files ever be accessible by the individual who owned the home?
Possibly. If
Read-only.
they could be tied to their lot and have their file accessible to them, yeah.
And it would be read-only, they couldn't
I'd
change
need to
anything.
check with.
You can usually
protocol.
set up different securities.
Right.
There are ways to go around that, but I think the key is to get it raised enough that we get the discovery done on it.
Yeah, because I think the people coming in here in the next 10 years aren't going to want to see paper copies of anything.
No,
You know,
no.
they're-
Number 6. Would you guys agree?
6, sounds good.
That sounds good.
Make the golf cart parking 9.
She's got that.
So that's part of what I'm doing in this inspection. I've done most of, if not all of the outside grounds, and we're looking for opportunities to pitch the board on potential cart parking.
Yeah, that
Not
could-
a lot of
that-
extra areas, but there are
No.
some areas we can carve
There's some
out.
that can be accessed
It's
fairly
dependent on the
easily.
golf course.
Well,
No.
one location is kind of dependent on the golf course, but
There's another that
There's
isn't.
another that's not.
there are others that aren't.
Yeah.
So it's
Would
a
the
little-
digitized office records be outsourced or handled in-house?
Part of the discovery is which way do you go? Because
It can be
you can
done
do
both
either
ways.
one.
Yeah.
And
It's
can be
it's pretty
soft.
labor
Well, the
intensive,
discovery piece is in-house.
at least
but
initially.
implementation is, I don't think we can burden the current staff
Yeah.
for that.
No, that would be an outsource to
jobs-
bring
That would
someone
make-
in.
Yeah,
to get
jobs
all
make
wouldn't
that.
get done.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's only 2 left. I can tell you right now, the acoustics for the room and meeting room, it's kind of low-hanging fruit too. We just need to find out what it's going to take and what it's going to cost.
Yeah, and part of the problem with not doing it is we're not able to use the technology to
Correct.
the extent that's available to you. The Zoom, you know, even even a conference call is tough to have a conversation because of the noise bouncing around in the room. It's hard
Right.
for the person on the other end to understand what's being said. So yeah, it would make a big
Well, I
difference.
can't imagine, so I wasn't here when this room was built. Did you have the sound stuff up then?
No, actually,
So
it
that was something you probably had to
carpet
learn.
on the walls. And, yeah, from floor to ceiling, carpet on the walls. And it was the 12-inch acoustic tiles on just the roof. And when I got here 10 years ago, there was a little corner, I think, that started to drop, and they came in and took all of the stuff off. And this place was an echo chamber. It was unbelievable, the sound
Yeah.
in here. You couldn't talk.
I've been through that
So it made a
with
big
another
difference
building.
to what we did.
Is it possible, because we've done that before, we put acoustics up before, like I said, in the annex, to at least get a cost and then determine, do we really want to do this right now
Yeah,
or
we've
not?
done that too. They
We-
brought them in temporarily to see how it would work.
Yeah, I know we have an estimated cost, but it's old
Yeah.
information, so we need to make it more current to today's expenses.
Could we just do that much at least, figure out what the cost is, and then we'd have to figure out, are we going to do this now or later? Because I don't think that's a huge cost, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, depends on how you define huge costs, but, I mean, it's not gonna be cheap, but it's not gonna be like the cost of some of these other projects.
But it shouldn't be labor intensive for staff either to get that
No, it
done.
won't be at all, other than, bidding it out.
Yeah.
We already have the specifications, it's already been designed. Jake did that a few years back, actually.
Okay.
All right, we've got it up there. We'll need to continue to revisit this. The more information we get, we need to, and there's no reason for updates, just to keep this in front of people at general sessions.
On a quarterly basis, I bring in a project list that is an update to what's currently
Right, I remember
in
that.
process. So this, if there's an update to it, I could add that. I still don't know what other things that you're thinking about, or have you thought about adding to this, or what residents have thought about adding to it.
The other thing that I heard loud and clear, and I would assume this would apply for bocce too, but you do have some heating elements there, but I know on the paddle courts, and I would assume on the tennis courts too, you notice it now, it's pretty chilly in the mornings, if to look into heating elements for that, wall-mounted. Likewise, I would think the tennis courts and actually all the outdoor facilities with misters, again, nothing we need to pull the trigger on, but something to keep on the radar, that these are opportunities to improve the facilities, especially as we bring in new residents and stuff to make the area more attractive.
Do we have a process for getting input from residents right now? Just ask them to send us in, or?
Yeah, the process right now that I learned in my first month is lots of emails and phone calls that I don't initiate.
Yeah.
Hello,
I-
hello, Mr. Burger.
Yeah. I don't know if we're ready for a town hall on this, because we're really just in a beginning stage here, but ideas certainly.
Yeah. No, it would be good to have a suggestion box or something. I'm using that term loosely, but something, a mechanism to collect suggestions. Have you done that in the past?
I can put it out, so we can advertise either.
Okay.
Okay.
So Kimberly will inform us on that, how to best approach that. Well, thanks, folks. We're right up to 1 o'clock here. I think we at least got something to start with, got a stake in the ground. Now we'll move forward and adjust as we need to going forward.
Can you change
We are adjourned.
the